floor, and I'm sure that he will give us a very interesting overview, very well known in France. Yes, I know we are in France, but we certainly have a good memory of Jean de Beauharnais, which means that we are very closely connected. To speak about this issue, which is spreading out to other ones, let me start by telling you why I was unable to take part in the opening sessions of this meeting. And I would like to thank UNESCO for having organized this. As I said, had to attend a very important meeting of the Scientific Council of the Library of France.
We must know that the National Library gave up the idea of being a reference library for scientific books. And when President Mitterrand decided to build a new library, a different decision was made, and therefore France, the French government, invested a huge amount of money to redo the National Library and to make it a first-class library in the scientific field. So we retrospectively replenished book collections in this field. 20 years later, what do we see? The first consideration is that there are very few users of these collections at the National Library. And that is for two reasons. First, living or live research only uses specialized libraries, and all in all, those who come to the National Library are interested in the history of science. So there is a sort of sociological aspect and also an epistemological aspect. The sociological aspect has to do with the matter of usage. Scientific researchers need, first of all, to have real-time access to most recent production, and they also need a remote access without having to physically go to places. So what we offer doesn't cater to their needs. On the other hand, if we are happy with the most recent production, we lose sight of the historical perspective, therefore the historical evolution of a science. Why is that the case? You know, in science, the relationship with the past is very short. For instance, a medical article that is 5 years old is history. So this is the characteristic, the hallmark of these disciplines. So national libraries are faced with very radical choices, which I'm going to summarize in the following way. So far, 85% of our acquisitions are paper-based. As of next year, the ratio will be the opposite. 80% of our new acquisitions will be e-books, e-material. And there will be three areas. One, the must-have magazines or journals. Then rare magazines, namely those that specialized libraries give up because they have budget constraints. And also the third area is archives. Therefore, a retrospective electronic collection that makes it possible to guarantee continuity and therefore to keep an eye on the evolution, on the developments of a subject matter. These are very important areas, and we are moving from a different model, from physical presence to remote consultation. So we've made choices, the National Library has made choices, but these choices are the result of what other libraries have also made. I must say it is we should talk about an ecosystem of national libraries, because national libraries need to think as a team. And there can't be a separation between consulting books and having to come to the book. So we need to talk about a sort of book diversity, regardless of budget constraints. Libraries need to be able to acquire rare and not frequently asked for titles. So we're really radically changing our landscape. And this choice concerning scientific subjects will also be applied to humanistic science and to the arts. In those disciplines as well, the relationship to the past is very, very different. A 2-year-old medical article, as said, is history. In literature, things are different. Articles last longer, so we are grappled with retrospective conversion of a very large heritage. I don't want to go into the details here of how to finance this conversion by public funding, by partnership with Google's, or public-private partnerships. But we need to consider that such a process will take at least 30 years in order to be quite complete and exhaustive. So I would like to say that in order to try and define tomorrow's libraries, I think that in the next 30, 40 years, they will be hybrid. Namely, they will be paper-based and with e-books. They will be very diversified depending on the uses and the production. That's what I said about science. They must be exportable. It is fundamental, it is of paramount importance that the heritage, the books they have in physical places, can be reused so that others can remotely access these books. I won't go into the details of the technical aspect of this, but this is a fundamental requirement. So I'd like to finish off with 2 final observations. And I'll give you an insight on the current problems. First, we talk about e-books as though paper books and e-books are the same thing. But language here is tricky because the noun stays the same, but paper books and e-books are very different. Tomorrow's e-books will be radically different from traditional books. E-books will be multimedia. E-books will consist of interactive chapters, so it will be quite a different product from traditional books. So the selection and the preservation of these books will be different. And then there's an abundant intellectual production on the web, which doesn't get published. So what are we supposed to do with all of the blogs and scientific blogs that can have considerable added value, but these cannot be compared to books? How can we identify this? How can we archive them? And how can we include them into a catalogue? These are new questions, new issues that will be fundamental for libraries and also for researchers. With problems of authors' rights, of course. In general, blogs are free access, but once they are libraries, then copyright is applicable, and therefore it cannot be openly accessed. So these things need to be sorted out. Then final point, someone already mentioned it, preservation. Preservation of digital data is very tricky because it is an ongoing process and it's very costly as well. the strength of digital lies in the capacity of real-time dissemination, universal dissemination. But this is also a weakness because these data are extremely vulnerable in a way. So for the publishing industry, I think that it will be impossible to have the business model for e-books and paper books. I think that either of the two models will win, as is already happening with scientific publications. It will take different times according to different countries, but that will be unavoidable because I don't think coexistence is possible. Paper will not die, will not disappear. We will have probably print on demand because that will be an option that will be often used. And for national libraries that are entrusted with preservation, well, we are to ask ourselves the following questions. In a few years, won't it be safer and cheaper to preserve a certain number of e-materials as papers, and they can be deposited, warehoused in warehouses in the countryside, rather than keeping up an system of e-records, because that's very costly. We need to constantly generate new files, and sometimes we wonder how useful this practice is. There you go. I gave you some insights on this problem that I think we'll have to be busy with for a few years to come. Thank you.